Then, as now, Mayors Against Illegal Guns will ask Congress and the White House to take common sense steps to reduce gun violence. There are three major pieces of legislation that the President should push Congress to pass. And let me point out that one of the few acts related to firearms that Congress has passed in recent years was to immunize firearms manufacturers and dealers from lawsuits brought by those injured with guns. If they can do that, what an outrage. If they can do that, they can do what we're proposing now. Think about that. Rather than trying to solve the problem, they deliberately passed a piece of legislation to make it worse. I don't know whether there's any other industry that has received congressional immunity from lawsuits brought by those injured with their products. First, Congress should pass the Fixed Gun Checks Act, which would close the private sale loophole that allows more than 40% of gun sales to go through without a background check. It would require every gun buyer to pass a background check. Now, the majority of gun sales already go through the background check system, and it's neither onerous nor intrusive, nor does it infringe on anyone's rights. This bill would also require states and the federal government to send all necessary records on felons, domestic abusers, the seriously mentally ill, and other dangerous people to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. In fact, the President, with a simple stroke of his pen, not needing approval from anybody else, could ensure the federal government's compliance with this provision. Congress did what they always do. They pass a law, and then they don't enforce it. They don't vote the money to enforce it, and they don't let the President appoint somebody to do the enforcement. Second, it is time to pass an enforceable and effective assault weapons ban, one that isn't riddled with loopholes and easy evasion. A previous ban expired in 2004, and even though President Bush supported reinstating it, Congress never acted. That must change. Congress should also ban the high-capacity magazines that have been used again and again in these mass shootings. These weapons and ammunition can be used to kill large numbers of people quickly, and regulating them certainly falls within the bounds of the Second Amendment. And third, the President and Congress should work together to make gun trafficking a felony, as Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, and others have proposed. This legislative package would make it harder for criminals, drug abusers, minors, and the mentally ill to get guns, and harder for them to inflict the level of carnage that we saw this week. It's not a panacea. It wouldn't get rid of all the guns on the streets, but it would go a long ways towards limiting them and limiting the number of people killed. And it would make it easier for our police and prosecutors to lock up those who supply illegal guns to criminals and the mentally ill. We here urge the President to include all three of these steps in any legislative package he sends to Congress. And we urge him to assemble a legislative package quickly so that gun violence can be the first order of business when the new Congress takes up when it convenes in January. I think the millions of Americans who have been affected by gun violence, including the individuals standing with me today, deserve nothing less. The President and Congress can and should address these measures. At the same time, they're reaching an agreement on avoiding the fiscal cliff. These things have nothing to do with each other. And if Congress and the President can't focus on two things at once, who on earth did we elect? At the same time, these are steps that the President can take on his own right now to address gun violence, in addition to ordering all federal agencies to send data to the crime database. And there should be no delay. I've already mentioned the federal compliance criminal background check system. There are three others. First, the President should make the confirmation of a new director for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms a higher priority than it's been so far. It has been 6 years since the ATF has had a confirmed director. Can you imagine the outrage if the Department of Homeland Security went 6 years without a confirmed director? It would never happen, because it would be a public safety threat and Americans would never tolerate it. Well, let me tell you, leaving the ATF without a director is also a public safety event. You would think that the President could demand, could cajole, should convince Congress, or we should shame Congress into approving somebody who can enforce the very laws that Congress passed. And that's why today I urge the President to make a recess appointment to fill the vacancy at the top of the ATF. Second, the President should direct the Justice Department to step up its prosecution of gun criminals who try to buy guns. In 2009, 71,000 people who had been convicted of gun crimes tried to buy guns by lying on their background checks. Yet the federal government prosecuted only 77 of those cases. If your math isn't any good, I'll do it for you. That's 1/10 of 1%. These are gun criminals trying to buy guns illegally, and the federal government is just letting them walk. And third, the President should immediately lift what's known as the TART gag order, which keeps the public in the dark about gun traffickers, who they are and how they operated. In Kansas, the voters rejected TART when he ran for governor, and now it's time for the President to reject his amendment. New York has some of the toughest gun laws in the country, and every day the members of the NYPD put their lives on the line to enforce those laws. Those are big reasons why we're the safest big city in the nation. And this year we're on course to record the fewest homicides in modern memory. But we're not satisfied with that. Even one murder is one murder too many, in our city or in any city. One murder is a tragedy that the victim's loved ones carry with them for the rest of their lives, and it's no consolation if it's the only one. In one of the I Demand a Plan videos we're releasing today, a New Yorker, Chris Foy, who is with us today, talks about the death of his 13-year-old son, who was killed by a stray bullet near his home in Harlem. He describes what happened as the worst pain a parent can go through. Today, tragically, many more parents in Connecticut are now going through that pain. So let's listen to what he and others have to tell us.